When we feel a certain way, such as experiencing hurt by a comment made by a loved one or an insult that we receive from our boss, our brains go through a rapid, almost automatic process that's designed really to protect us. However, this process often ends up causing much more harm than good. The great news is that we are not powerless over our brains. When we understand even a little bit about the science of what's happening, we can learn how to pause and take actions to rewire our brain processes for better outcomes. A part of the brain called the thalamus receives a stimulus from our eyes, ears, and other senses. Then that info flows to our rational brain, called the cortex. This is the higher level part of the brain which separates us from animals. The cortex allows us to weigh the trade-offs of our actions and decisions. The info from our thalamus, our senses, flows to our rational brain, the cortex. It's important to realize that the distance to the amygdala, which is the emotional reactive part of the brain, is much shorter than the distance to the thalamus. Because of the shorter distance, our amygdala gets the signal first, and thus our initial impulses are all emotional. I want you to think fight, flight, or freeze here. This may be handy in the case of stumbling upon a hungry lion. I mean, you'd be dead if the cortex was processing that decision, but can be quite problematic in modern life. This is at the forefront of neuroscience today. When does that cortical pathway dominate, and when does that instinctual amygdala pathway dominate? Neuroscientific research has discovered a direct pathway between the cortex and the amygdala, meaning your rational mind can say to your amygdala, stop, calm down, this is safe, we can take our time to respond. How does knowing this brain science affect our mental and emotional health? It all starts with a key principle of brain science, which I'm certain you've heard before. Neurons that fire together, wire together. We can strengthen or weaken our neurological pathways based on how often we use them. Just like our physical muscles, the more we learn to exercise our cortical pathway, the more we build up that muscle, and the more we can override, reduce, and pause our emotional reaction mechanism, especially in situations where it is not needed. Much of what my neuro-rewiring program is about is being aware of when we trigger that lower level instinctual pathway, and then how we can practice the pause and get back to high level, rational, self-caring, healthy thoughts and actions.